story of where this new cultural trend began actually begins in an unexpected place. It actually begins with a problem in our economy that began in the 2008 financial crisis. What happened in the back of the 2008 financial crisis, and this was really the Big Bang, the origin story behind the modern stakeholder capitalism and ESG movement. What happened in 2008 was under a Republican administration, a bunch of big banks got bailed out by the public at the public fisc when times went bad, even though their bankers made a lot of money when times were good. And so what the old left in this country had to say was, in my opinion, quite reasonable in response to that. What they said was that, you know what, if you're going to use public funds to bail out those wealthy corporate fat cats, then we're going to demand that those wealthy corporate fat cats give us their money so we can redistribute it to poor people to help poor people. Agree or not, that is what the old left had to say. But right around that time, there was the birth of a new strand of progressives in this country who had a slightly different view. What they said is the real problem wasn't quite economic injustice. It wasn't quite poverty, no. It was racism and misogyny and bigotry and climate change. And what happened was that that actually served as a lifeline for Wall Street, served as the gift of a generation for big business in this country. Because it turns out if you're Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street is a pretty tough pill to swallow. But this new, what came to be known as ESG agenda was actually pretty easy. You applaud diversity and inclusion, you put some token minorities on your boards, you muse about the racially disparate impact of climate change after you fly in a private jet to Davos. It's pretty good work if you can get it. But they did not do it for free. They effectively expected that the new progressive movement in this country, the new left, looked the other way when it came to leaving their own corporate power structure intact. And that trade worked like a charm. As I tell in my first book, it is the story of how a bunch of big banks got in bed with a bunch of newly woke millennials. Together they birthed woke capitalism, and they used that to put Occupy Wall Street up for adoption. And that trade worked so well that actually their friends in Silicon Valley on the other coast got in on the act. They did the same thing because the old version of break up big tech actually used to come from the Democratic Party. And so what Silicon Valley realized was if this trade can work well for Wall Street on the back of the bailouts, we're going to play the same game. We're going to say that, you know what, we will use our monopoly power to advance your goals, to censor certain speech on the internet, hate speech or misinformation as you define it. But again, we will not do it for free. We effectively expect that new left to look the other way when it comes to leaving our monopoly power intact. And again, that trade worked masterfully for both sides. See, that is the story of the arranged marriage that defined the next decade and a half of American capitalism. It is not an arranged marriage of love. It is more like mutual prostitution. And the net result of that act was the birth of a new ESG industrial complex that actually was far more powerful than either big government or big business because it was a hybrid of the two that together was able to do what neither one could accomplish on its own.